So, last week we made our way through Job chapter 20, and we heard from Zophar for the second time. And Zophar, in his second thing, he kind of talked to Job about something that sounded familiar to us. He told Job all about the fate of the wicked again, which was something Bildad had done. And we recognize, hey, we've kind of heard this before. But we went through it, and Zophar had this picture of what was going to befall the wicked people. They were going to have an inevitable fall. Without question, they were going to fall from grace. They were going to fall from their lofty heights and all that. They were going to face immediate futility, and it was going to be an inescapable fate for them. And we looked at this whole chapter, and we kind of went through it, and we noticed that there was something different about it than what Bildad had previously written. When Bildad had told us about the fate of the wicked, he was talking about the eternal fate, the end, what was going to happen to them, what was going to befall them in the end. God was going to work out his plan. They were going to fall before God in the end. But what Zophar was trying to say is that the wicked, they're going to have all these troubles in this life. So Job is going to respond to that. And I don't think Job agreed with what Zophar was saying. Again, if Zophar was looking at it from an eternal perspective, I could see that it would make sense. But the way he was presenting it, he was talking about in the present. This is what was going to happen. And Job is listening to all this, and he's thinking to himself, how are you coming up with this stuff? Where are you seeing all of these issues? So Job actually responds to the three statements that Zophar makes. That one, that there's going to be an inevitable fall, that there's going to be immediate futility, and there's going to be an inescapable fate. And that's what he does in chapter 21. Now, the first 6 verses is just another personal opening that Job gives. And in those first 6 verses, he kind of has been doing what he's been doing every time he responds to them. Guys, where's the comfort? Where is the mercy? Where is the friendship that you're supposed to be showing to me? That's what I really need. I don't need all this judgment against me. So let's just look at those first 6 verses, and then we'll get into his responses to Zophar. The first 6 verses say this: But Job answered and said, Hear diligently my speech, and let this be your consolations. Suffer me that I may speak, and after that I have spoken, mock on. But as for me, is my complaint to man? And if it were so, why should not my spirit be troubled? Mark me and be astonished. Lay your head upon your mouth. Even when I remember I am afraid, and trembling taketh hold of my flesh. So it's basically Job's response here saying, stop accusing me of being this wicked person. Look at how bad I'm suffering. Offer me some comfort. He wants some compassion, but we know by now he's just not going to get it from them. So he goes on to respond to what Zophar has said. And I think the overall picture of chapter 21, you could almost hear Job saying, I'm kind of confused, Zophar. Kind of confused by what you said. Tell me exactly where you see these things happening. You claim the wicked aren't allowed to enjoy their wealth. Show me the wicked man who doesn't. You claim that the wicked are pulled down from their lofty heights. Show me one who has been. You claim the wicked are hated by everyone and judged by God and die young. Do you have an example of this? Because, frankly, I'm confused. I just don't see what you're saying is happening. So just as Zophar had 3 points, Job answers those 3 points. Verses 7 through 16, he answers the question, or asks the question, where is this immediate futility that you speak of? Starting at verse 7, it says, Where do the wicked live? Wherefore do the wicked live, become old, yea, are mighty in power? Their seed is established in their sight with them, and their offspring before their eyes. Their houses are safe from fear, neither is the rod of God upon them. Their bull gendereth and faileth not. Their cow calveth and casteth not her calf. They send forth their little ones like a flock, and their children dance. They take the timbrel and harp and rejoice at the sound of the organ. They spend their days in wealth, and in a moment go down to the grave. Therefore they say unto God, Depart from us, for we desire not the knowledge of thy ways. What is the Almighty that we should serve him? And what profit should we have if we pray unto him? Lo, their good is not in their hand. The counsel of the wicked is far from me. So he starts off by saying, Wherefore do the wicked live, become old, yea, and are mighty in power? It's a pretty good question for Zophar to consider. Zophar said God's going to knock them down. Job wants to know why he ever lets them ascend to begin with. Why does God even let them stay alive? Why does he even let them get rich? Why does he let them grow to power? Beyond that, Zophar has attested that even when the wicked do prosper, they don't get to enjoy it. Everything gets taken from them. They don't get to enjoy that. Job says, that's not what I see. Their seed is established in their sight with them, their offspring before their eyes. Their houses are safe from fear, neither is the rod of God upon them. They're not facing any judgment from God. Their house is a safe place. But Zophar says, oh no, once the wicked get wealthy and everything's going to come crashing down on them. They're going to have that inevitable fall. They're not going to get all this stuff. He goes on and says, their bull gendereth and faileth not. Their calf calveth and casteth not her calf. They send forth the little ones like the flock, and their children dance. They take the timbrel, the harp, and rejoice at the sound of the organ. They spend their days in wealth, and in a moment they go down to the grave. Now, what does it say there, Sally, in verse 13 in the NIV?
They spend their years in prosperity and go down to the grave in peace.
Ah, yeah. So, what he's saying here does not mean that God kills them quickly. You know, because it almost sounds like he's agreeing with Zophar. Because Zophar says, oh, they're going to fall and all their wickedness is going to come to an end. They're going to die and they're going to die young and all. And what it says there sounds, they spend their days in wealth and in a moment go down to the grave. It sounds like God's going to take them out just like that. But that's not what it means. If you're going to die and you know you're going to die tomorrow, how do you want to die? Do you want to have a long, lingering disease? Do you want to suffer? No, you want to go in your sleep. You want it to happen quickly. And that's what he says. This is what he's saying. He says they die in peace. When they die, it's not like they're miserable and they're suffering and they're in agony. He says when these wicked people die, they're not dying like that. Zophar says, oh yeah, that's what's going to happen to them. They're going to die miserable and old, sickly, and their children are going to hate them, and they're just going to, it's going to be horrible. And Job says, no, they're not. When they die, they're going to die in peace. They're just going to go to sleep and not wake up. Zophar said that the wicked are miserable with their wealth. Job says, no, they're not. Their houses are safe. The rod of God is not on them. Their oxen mate without fail, basically. Their cows don't abort. Their children are happy. They dance. They spend their days in prosperity, and they die in peace. Oh yeah, that sounds like a miserable life, doesn't it? Everything you put your hand to prospers. It's miserable. What a miserable life the wicked endure. What makes all this strange is that they enjoy all this happiness while they turn their backs on God. Did you catch that? Therefore, in verse 14, therefore they say unto God, Depart from us, for we desire not the knowledge of thy ways. What is the Almighty that we should serve him? And what profit should we have if we pray unto him? Lo, their good is not in their hands. The counsel of the wicked is far from me. They live happy and they live without God. They reject him, they mock him, they question him, they refuse to seek him. And Job says, lo, their good is not in their hand. Their prosperity is not their own doing. They reject God, and yet it is God who makes them rich. This is why Job doesn't emulate them. That's why he knows that it's not their plan that works. It is God that made them rich. This is the cause for Job's confusion. Zophar says the wicked don't enjoy their wealth. Job says, yes, they do. They are wicked, but God makes them rich and then lets them enjoy it. Because even the wicked, the wealth that they have, the things that they have, the prosperity they have, is only because God allows it. Zophar said the wicked didn't get to enjoy their wealth, but Job says, that's not what I see. Where is the immediate futility? Where is the inevitable fall? Verses 17 through 26. How oft is the candle of the wicked put out, and how oft cometh their destruction upon them? God distributeth sorrow in his anger. They are stubble before the wind, and as chaff the storm carrieth away. God layeth up his iniquity for his children. He rewardeth them, and he shall know it. His eyes shall see his destruction, and he shall drink of the wrath of the Almighty. For what pleasure hath he in the house after him, when the number of his months is cut off in the midst? Shall any teach God knowledge, seeing that he judgeth those that are high? One dieth in his full strength, being wholly at ease and quiet. His breasts are full of milk, his bones are moistened with marrow. And another dieth in the bitterness of his soul, and never eateth with pleasure. They shall lie down alike in the dust, and the worm shall cover them. Zophar said the fall from their heights would come crashing down. Job says, how oft is the candle of the wicked put out? How oft cometh their destruction upon them? Where are you seeing this, Zophar? How often does this happen? Because he's not seeing it. Zophar acted like this was a concrete statement. This was a theology that he could get behind. And we've been talking about this theology, this idea of the prosperity gospel. And that's where Zophar is. He says, wicked, cursed. You're going to face death. You're going to have problems. Everything's going to fall apart. Your life's going to be miserable. You're going to face that inevitable fall. But if you're good, then God's going to give you everything. He's going to bless you. And Job would like to know where he comes up with that. How oft cometh their destruction upon them? God distributeth sorrow in his anger. He goes on through verse 21 and asks a few more questions and makes statements there. No, the wicked seem to be doing just fine in verse 18. Second half of 17 and 18. How oft cometh their destruction upon them? God distributeth sorrow in his anger. They are stubble before the wind, and as chaff that the storm carrieth away. So Job's answer is an obvious no. The wicked seem to be doing just fine. Best I can tell, God's not judging them at all. They aren't being destroyed. They aren't being scattered. They aren't being removed. And if you look at the world today, you'll come to a similar conclusion. We talked about this last week. If you look at the world around us today and look at the people that we might consider being evil, wicked, people that aren't followers of God, people that are doing things that we know are wrong, and yet it looks like they have all the wealth. They have all the fun. They have all the good stuff. And it's God that's allowing them to have it. But that doesn't make sense according to Zophar's theology. Because Zophar's theology says if you're wicked, you don't get the good stuff. But Job's looking around and he's seeing all these rich people, these wicked people that do. Job's seeing what Zophar is not. Zophar's reasoning is flawed. Job goes on and says in verses 19 through 21, God layeth up his iniquity for his children. He rewardeth him, and he shall know it. His eyes shall see his destruction, and he shall drink the wrath of the Almighty. For what pleasure hath he in his house after him, and when the number of his months is cut off in the midst? Zophar attested that a man will get rich, die, and then God will take all that wealth from his children. Job says, well, that's pointless. If you really want to teach the wicked a lesson, you should do it while the wicked are still alive. Take it from them while they're still alive so they can suffer. The wicked don't care what happens to their kids. They don't care what they leave behind. The wicked are greedy. They're concerned with themselves. The simple fact is that God is not destroying the wicked. That's the point. Where is this immediate futility? Where is this inevitable fall that Zophar keeps speaking of? It's just not there. There's nothing to support it. It's not happening. Instead, Job maintains God works in mysterious ways that just don't seem to make sense to us. The inevitable fall that you speak of just simply isn't true. Look at what it says in verses 22 through 26. Shall any teach God knowledge, seeing he judgeth those that are high? One in his full strength, being wholly at ease and quiet, his breasts are full of milk, and his bones are moistened with marrow. And another dieth in the bitterness of his soul, and never eateth with pleasure. They shall lie down light in the dust, and the worm shall cover them. Suffering and prosperity make no sense to us. Why does one man suffer and another not? Why does one die in comfort and another in pain? Why? But you cannot say that it is determined by whether or not a man is wicked, because that's simply not the case. We cannot make that blanket statement. This immediate futility and inevitable fall you speak of just are not happening, Zophar. They just don't happen. It's not the way God works. Bob has mentioned a few different times while we've been going through this, and the verse pops in my mind every time I hear something along this line where he says, one dies miserable and the other dies wealthy and fat and happy and the whole bit. And, who determines how, why? Why does this happen? And Bob has mentioned several times, God says that the rain falls on the just and the unjust. Yeah. His blessings fall on both. His suffering that he allows, he falls on both. And it is what... No, I know that. I know that. But you've mentioned it several times because it fits with correct theology, not this prosperity gospel theology. Because the prosperity gospel says, no, sunshine and rainbows and puppies and kittens for the good. Rain, thunders, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, that's all for the wicked people. They get all the bad stuff. But it's just not the case.
Abraham's bosom and Lazarus, the rich
Yeah.
man and Lazarus.
Yeah.
He had everything. And Lazarus had nothing.
Yep. And he walked into paradise and the rich man didn't.
Oops.
Yeah. So now, Zophar in these last verses asks, where is this inescapable fate? Verses 27 through 34. Behold, I know your thoughts and the devices which you wrongfully imagine against me. For you say, where is the house of the prince? And where are the dwelling places of the wicked? Have you not asked them that go by the way? And do you not know their tokens? That the wicked is reserved to the day of destruction. They shall be brought forth to the day of wrath. Who shall declare this way to his face? And who shall repay him what he hath done? Yet shall he be brought to the grave, and shall remain in the tomb. The clouds of the valley shall be sweet unto him, and every man shall draw after him, as there are innumerable before him. And comfort ye me in vain, seeing in your answers there remaineth falsehood. So he begins here by getting personal with Zophar. I know your thoughts and the devices which you wrongfully imagine against me. He knows that Zophar is convinced that Job is a sinner. And it has to be some big, horrible sin for what Job is going through. And there is no other way that Job could be facing the trouble that he's facing. So he's got this imagined against him. For you say, where is the house of the prince? And where are the dwelling places of the wicked? I know what you're thinking, and I know that you're accusing me. Accusing me of being wicked. You're saying that the wicked have their houses destroyed. Oh, by the way, Job, where's your house? Oh, it fell on my children. I get what you're implying, but you're still wrong. They don't have immediate futility. They don't have an inevitable fall. And here they don't have an inescapable fate. Remember, Zophar held that they would be hated, punished, and killed. Zophar spoke like they would be outcasts in the world. Zophar made it sound like their bodies would be cast aside in mass graves by the road. In chapter 20, verse 27, he said, the heavens shall reveal his iniquity, and the earth shall rise up against him. Well, again, Job says here, that's not what I see. Verse 29, have you not asked them that go by the way, and do you not know their tokens? The idea behind this, from what I can tell, is that the traveling man was generally a person of wealth. Somebody that was a traveler had money. Do you know their testimony? Do you know how they came by their money? Do you know if that person is wicked or not? Because if they're traveling, they have money. He's calling into question if he really knows their background. They're traveling about seeing the world, and guess what? They're not facing some inescapable fate. They're out there loving life. They're taking the cruises. They're traveling. The wicked reserveth to the day of destruction. They shall be brought forth to the day of wrath. Who shall declare his way to his face? And who shall repay him what he hath done? It sounds like Job might be agreeing with Zophar here. But I think it's just an understanding issue on our part. The word translated as reserved actually means to restrain or to hold back. So the wicked are restrained from the day of wrath. They're not going to face the day of wrath. Job's point is that the wicked don't ever seem to be getting what they deserve. They always seem to escape trouble, not fall into it. According to verse 31, no one confronts or punishes them. According to verse 32, yet shall he be brought to the grave and shall remain in the tomb. Verse 33 says their burial is peaceful. The way they die makes other people follow their path. That's what it says. The clouds of the valley shall be sweet unto him, and every man shall draw after him, as there are innumerable before him. Think about the funeral of a wicked man. Think about in our lifetime somebody that would be declared wicked that has died. Has there been an uprising at their funeral? Has there been funerals where nobody has shown up and people are just, he was such a horrible man? We heard about one at the dinner we went to last month. But for the most part, think about like the ruler over there in China that died, 20 years ago or whatever. They had parades for him. They honored him. People grieved over his death. He was a wicked ruler. Think about people in the entertainment industry that have lived wicked lives. And when they died, oh, how the people mourned. Oh, how the people wept and threw themselves on the ground and went there and saw their graves and wept and just carried on. Zophar says, when the wicked die, nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to pay attention. They're just going to throw their body in a dung heap somewhere, and it's going to stay there, and nobody's going to care. Job says, really? Can you give me an example of that actually happening? Because it's not the norm. It's not a blanket statement that can be made. The notion that the wicked live in futility and fall from their perch and suffer in the hands of the world just simply is not true. And then Job comes to his point, verse 34. How then ye comfort me in vain, seeing in your answers there remaineth falsehood. Job says, what you're telling me, that you're saying is truth, that is supported, that you have all this verifiable facts, and this is the way it is, and that's the way it's always been, and that's the way it's always going to be, are lies. What you're telling me is of no value to me. It is no comfort to me. Why should I listen to you? You don't know anything about anything. Your theology is completely wrong, and it is unhelpful. This is the prosperity gospel, and the lies it promotes, confusing material wealth and health with God's true blessing, is the prosperity gospel, and it is a lie. And Job is calling Zophar on it because he recognizes that's what it is. We're getting ready to start next week, round 3. Ding, ding. Round 3 of the responses from his friends. Next week, we will hear from Eliphaz again. Eliphaz is going to come to Job, and he's going to give him more of the same. He's going to continue with the prosperity gospel that they've been feeding to him and beating him down with. Next week, we'll see 3 of the flaws that are in the prosperity gospel. For now, let's have a word of prayer. Lord, we thank you for this time together this evening to pray and to study your word. Help us, Lord, not to be led astray, not to follow after the prosperity gospel or to let it infiltrate our faith in any way, shape, or form. I pray, Lord, that we would be good comforters, good friends, that we would see people in suffering and show compassion and mercy instead of judgment. Amen.